Wow, we've got a full night, our full room. Welcome to Fairleigh Dickinson University's Vancouver campus. It's wonderful to see so many people turning out for Poets Corner. I am not hosting tonight. I am simply here to say welcome to the university. We are very proud to host Poets Corner and offer the territorial acknowledgement that we are on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. But without further ado, I am going to turn over hosting to Jillian. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, James. All right. Okay, our first feature reader is Dominique Bernier-Cormier. Dominique is a Québécois Acadian poet, translator, and teacher. He's the author of Entre Rive and Shore and Correspondent. Correspondent was longlisted for the Raymond Souster Award, and an excerpt was featured on public transit across British Columbia as part of the Poetry in Transit program. Awesome, making our rides more poetic. Cool. Bernier-Cormier's poetry has won the Ralph Gustafson Prize for Best Poem and was a finalist for the National Magazine Award, the Montreal International Poetry Prize, and Arcs Poem of the Year Award. He lives in Vancouver, where he writes and teaches in both French and English. Dominique, come up here and.
All right, hi everyone. Ooh, that's nice to have a full room.
Yeah.
Yes, on a Tuesday too.
It's Wednesday.
Did I mention I'm a teacher? I'm very tired. And I'm on March break, so the days don't mean anything.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for people online too. Hello. This is like looking into two cameras. Okay. And thanks to Poets Corner for organizing this. To Kim for reading alongside me, and to all the open mic people. Oh my God, this is so, I love having an open mic. I think every poetry reading should have an open mic. This is awesome. The share should be, the stage should be shared. Yeah, this is awesome, so thank you. This is a pretty special reading for me. This is my first time reading from my second collection of poetry, Entre Rive and Shore. You pronounced it beautifully, perfectly. That's awesome. Thank you. It's published. It's going to be published actually by Goose Lane Editions on March 28th. But I have a few copies here if you want a little advanced copy to sell. And yeah, you'll notice something a little strange about the title. It is in two languages, right? French and English. Entre Rive and Shore meaning entre rive et rive, or between shore and shore. So it is a bilingual title. It's a bilingual book. There's poems in French, poems in English, poems in both languages in a weird Franglish, translations from French to English, self-translations, auto-translations, inter-translations, all sorts of weird stuff. Yeah, and the thing about writing a bilingual book, I guess, is, as every marketing expert will tell you, you double your languages, you double your book sales. Okay. No, it's actually kind of like the opposite. Well, not the opposite. It's kind of the fear is that the opposite happens, right? You're sort of torn between, am I going to double my readership, my audience? Am I going to be able to reach the French readership and the English readership? Or am I going to end up splitting people and sort of locking both communities out of the poems, right? And out of the book. And the book is largely about those two opposing instincts and that hope and that fear, right? The hope that kind of bilingualism can be a doubling of the self, but also the fear that bilingualism is a splitting and a cutting in half of the self, right? On a sort of more literal level, the book is about sort of two events. One is my ancestor in 1755 escaping a jail by dressing up in his wife's clothes. And the second event is me going on a road trip to Louisiana with my dad. So yeah, how are those connected? Yeah, I'm gonna situate you before I start reading. The last thing is I'm gonna talk a lot about Acadian identity and Acadians. For those of you that don't know what an Acadian is, this is an Acadian. Like I am an Acadian. Acadian people are Francophone people from the Maritime provinces, from New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. Yeah. I think that's kind of all you need to know for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read sort of the little introduction to the book, which gives you a bit of historical context for what I'm talking about. And yeah, it's going to be prose at first, so just bear through the prose. I know it's boring, and then we'll get to the poetry in a few minutes. So, who's bilingual here, by the way? Can I get a count
Je
for?
suis Québécoise, moi.
Yay! Okay, so yeah. So this is called Notes on Translation, and it serves as sort of like introduction to the book. I used to think that this was a book about a disguise, but now I know that it's a book about translation. In 1755, the British governor of Nova Scotia, Charles Lawrence, ordered all Acadian inhabitants to be deported from the colony. This decision was the culmination of 100 years of colonial conflict between France and Great Britain for control of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq. The French-speaking Acadians, who over the previous century and a half had developed their own distinct culture, had refused to sign an oath of allegiance to the British Crown. Many considered themselves neither French nor British and therefore neutral in the conflict. The word translation means to carry across, presumably a body of water. Between 1755 and 1763, more than 11,000 Acadians out of a total population of 14,000 were deported by boat to the British colonies of Massachusetts, Virginia, Carolina, Georgia. A translation of a people from one shore to another. At least 5,000 died from disease, starvation, or in shipwrecks. In 1755, my ancestor Pierre Cormier, 22 at the time, was living with his wife Nanette in Jolicoeur. In early August of that year, he was summoned by the British to Sţwx. There, he was read a royal proclamation declaring him a traitor to a distant crown and jailed in the barracks to await deportation. According to family lore, the night before his departure to Georgia, Pierre Cormier escaped from Sţwx by wearing a dress that Nanette had smuggled into his cell. If it weren't for that dress, my father always said, we might be speaking English and living in Louisiana, where many Acadians, including Pierre's brother, ended up settling. In May of 2019, my father and I traveled to Lafayette to explore that future we barely missed, ce destin qui nous a effleuré, and find traces of ourselves, to measure the space between two fates, entre évasion et exil. But still, I wonder, does any of it matter? Was Pierrot's escape in vain if 266 years later, I am speaking this in English anyway, and not in French? Does translation catch up to us all, inevitably? Despite what it looks like, this book isn't written in English. This is a translation, interrompue, a text stuck entre deux langues, two shores, a dark harbor where a navire fait escale between tongues. Okay. On to the poetry. Done with the prose. So I went on a road trip to Louisiana with my dad, and I didn't drive at the time, so my dad was essentially my driver. He drove me around Louisiana for 2 weeks. It was amazing. Emily, you just came back from Louisiana.
Love all your recommendations.
So good, yes. Yeah, and essentially we went there in order for me to sort of find stuff to write poems about, but to sort of find our long lost Cajun cousins, right? So a lot of Acadians, after being deported, ended up in Louisiana and became Cajuns, right? The word Cajun comes from Acadian. And we kind of wanted to see what was left of French, of Acadian culture in Louisiana. So this poem, this is a long poem, and I'm going to read a couple extracts from it. It's called Le Futur dont on se souvient déjà. Lafayette, Louisiana. A guard welcomes us to Earth with an accent and a gun. He runs his fingers through our clothes, 50 stars in his mouth, and sentences my father to a scan. X-rays march through his bones, a slow legion of fantômes. The guard asks us why we're here. I'm writing a book. He looks at me suspicious. About what? I want to say about transplanting a language to a new shore, about the roots it grows in dark hulls. Family history, I say. And I'm his driver, my father jokes. He waves us through. As we step outside, the heat hits us like a future dont on se souvient déjà. Première aube, and already the greenish rumors of tornadoes. I get woken up at dawn by a weather alert on my phone. Warning signs, funnel clouds, an emerald tint to the sky, a wind that dies too fast. In the yard of the Airbnb we're renting, magnolia flowers line the ground like fossils, bone bright and fill with rain that smells like lemons and scares me. I turn on the radio, searching for a Cajun voice that'll click into my chest like the long lost half of a twin amulet, and I map our itinerary for the day. Center for Cajun Folklore, I-99 to the Gros Bridge, Alexandre Mouton House, and Johnny Silver at La Poussière. On the futon, my father is asleep, a book about black holes on his chest. I record a minute of storm and slow it down, trying to hear each drop, each drop, but I can't tell where one word ends et l'autre commence. Why am I here again? To subtitle the rain, even the weather here, une langue étrange. This next little bit is about a swamp tour that we did. I don't know if you did a swamp tour on one of those boats with the big fans on the back. And yeah, it was amazing. It was like such a weird beautiful landscape. But we tried to book like the tour in French and the boat was full. And I thought that was just such an apt metaphor. We were trying to go to Louisiana to find French and they were like, no, we're full, sorry. No more French people, you're gonna have to do it in English. So we did the English tour, which was great too. I booked a swamp tour online, but the French boat is full. Instead, a man with a Hawaiian shirt, a silver goatee, and a southern drawl steers us smoothly through the bayou. The cypresses grow straight out of the water, their Gothic roots like tendons and wrists. The tinsel curtains of Spanish moss part in slow motion for us, and we sink deeper into that strange, quiet underworld. Purple hyacinths, endless, litter the surface like discarded pom-poms in the quiet after a game. Every 90 minutes, our guide says, Louisiana loses a football field's worth of land due to erosion. The French boat is out of sight now, but leaves a wake, little fragments of voice that drift like oil in the water and disappear just out of reach. Ces racines-là, ça s'appelle des genoux. Quand j'étais petit, on les coupait. Ouais, on nettoyait l'écorce pour faire des langues, des belles langues. At the blue moon, oh, okay. Let me take a break. Yeah. At the Blue Moon for the Zydeco Jam and 2-for-1 Ragin' Cajuns, I push the saloon doors open and walk into a poem about the South. The band playing Tennessee whiskey, a washboard reflecting the blue glow of a Coors sign. The bartender hears us speak French and asks where we're from. He uncuffs his sleeve to reveal an Acadiana flag and his last name, Landry, tattooed on his wrist. The bar fills slowly and people are drawn to the soft flame of our speech. They say, I don't speak it, but my mère did. Just childhood words. Étoile, pomme, feu. I can't remember. How do you say bird again? Their fingers rest lightly on the edge of their glasses, like believers at a seance. GMTs gliding on their own, full of neon across the wet counter. And am I the medium here? Un foot dans ce monde et un pied in the other. As if I could speak across the veil, but to what? Leur passé or their future. Okay. Okay, here's the big performance time. Here's where I tried to read bilingual poems. It's like acrobatics for your mouth. It's really, really hard. I tried for a long time to write poems that were like bilingual poems. And I mean, not like a French poem with English words in it or an English poem with some French words in it, but to really kind of like blend the syntaxes of the two languages. And it was failure after failure. And I finally, I think I kind of found a way to do it. And yeah, and I put them in this book, and I didn't realize that I would need to read them at some point. And they're much easier to write than to read. It's like two raccoons fighting inside your mouth. Like it's chaos. It's absolute chaos. Okay, I think I'm warmed up enough though. We'll try it. Excuse me if I stumble. Each night, j'attache un ruban de soie around my mâchoire in surrender and listen to the soft slang de mon sang whispering in my veins the sweet nothings que dusk me chuchote à l'oreille. Comme je disais, the important thing, c'est savoir se fendre le cerveau in half et de continuer à parler devant une foule of light, even ébloui, even aveuglé, même quand the base of the moon se fracasse dans le ciel et que la mer again, comme un orfèvre, must fix it in all its little pieces. Ma gorge glissée through an X-ray. They ask me, c'est quoi l'affaire that lights up the screen, the foreign object qui fait chanter la machine? Tell us quelle lueur, tell us quelle fracture, a brain de lilas triste and an unquenchable soif d'avenir. Okay. Last one. It actually said in the book it says 29. I'm going to say 31. It's because I'm 2 years older than when I wrote this poem. I want to be honest with you guys. I don't want to lie to you. Les phrases qui poussent in my head ne fleurissent plus qu'à naître et fissurent a cold floor dont mes genoux rêvent encore. Les plus belles traductions, like dreams, sont celles that don't make it across. Fenêtre, to be born on fire. Paupières, the skin of stone. 31 years now que j'essaie d'être né on both sides d'une seule rivière. That's it for me. Thank you so much, guys.